Hey guys, welcome back. So in the previous video, we did our first bit of blueprint scripting inside the level blueprint, which I still have up here at the moment. And inside our level blueprint, we set it up so that when the game is started, we toggle the visibility of a point light that we've placed in our level. So here's our script. And when the game is started, we call the event begin play node. Anything that is connected to it also gets executed, which is our toggle visibility. And it's targeting our light component and our point light. So in essence, when the game is started, if we simulate here, our light comes on, just as we expect. So I think that's a good first step as our intro to blueprint scripting. We're going to take this a little bit further though in this video. We want to add a little bit of interactivity with our blueprint here so that whenever the player enters our little room here, the light will turn on, and when they exit our room, the light will turn off. Just to make it a little bit more interactable than having it turn on automatically when the game is started. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to close the level blueprint here for a second because we need to set it up to determine when the player has actually entered our room. So we have no way of defining that just yet, so we need to set that up. Fortunately, we can do that with the use of a volume. And a volume is basically a three-dimensional area of space. But the good thing about volumes in UE4 is that they are aware of when something enters or exits it, which is ideal for our situation here. We're going to place a volume inside of our room here. When the player enters our room, he's entered the volume. And when they exit, then we can be notified through the events of our volume that the player has exited the volume. So that's perfect for what we want to do. So let's hop over to the modes panel. And there's a section for volumes that has all kinds of volumes that we can add. But for our purposes, we're going to stick to the basic volume. So if we go to the basics tab, down at the very bottom, we have a box trigger and a sphere trigger. These are both volumes, but they're just labeled as triggers. As these are usually what these volumes are used for, generating overlap events that can fire off other scripts and things inside Blueprint. So if you look at the tooltip here, it says a box-shaped trigger used to generate overlap events in the level. And the generate overlap events is the important takeaway there of that tooltip. If I open our level blueprint again here really quickly, we are using an event to start the toggle visibility or to start our script and call the toggle visibility node. So we're going to use a overlap event instead of our event begin play to toggle visibility. So let's add our box trigger. Going to go to the basics section, again in the modes panel. Just going to left click and drag a box trigger into our level here. I'm going to place it inside of our little room like so. And I'm going to position it somewhere in the center, something like this should be good. I think that's good enough. We're going to need to scale it up because it is super tiny right now. So let's hit R on our keyboard to enter scale mode. Let's grab the white box in the center so that we get all of our axes here. And then I'm going to drag to the right to kind of scale it up in size, like so. I'm actually going to select this first wall here, so our wall piece here. Over in the world outliner, I'm going to hide that momentarily. So I'm going to click this eye icon here to hide it, just so we can see our volume a little bit better. And it looks like it's kind of penetrating our wall a little bit, which is fine. So let's make sure that our trigger is still selected. So I'm going to reselect it and continue scaling it. So I'm going to drag along the X here and just scale it out to the side, something like this. It's kind of going into the wall again, perfectly fine. Is it going through the wall yet? No, I think that's fine. So I think this is good. That's good enough. We could hit W and kind of move it over a little bit so it clips into the wall like so. And we can also drag it up a little bit along the Z here. So let's drag it up into the air like so, something like this. And I think that's good. I think that is pretty good. We could actually, if we wanted to, we could move it back a little bit more so that it kind of is flush with the edge here, but I think this is fine. If you want to, you can go ahead and do so, but I think this is fine. The player is in the door frame and not necessarily in the volume like so. They won't necessarily trigger it, but I think that's good. Let's go ahead and continue. So I'm going to go back to the world outliner here, and I'm going to unhide our wall door here so that we could see it again. And now we can start working on the blueprint script for the events that are fired when the player enters or exits that volume that we just placed. So let's go ahead and make sure that in the world outliner the trigger box is selected. And then let's open our level blueprint again. If you recall, it's from the blueprints option under level blueprints. Let's go ahead and open our level blueprint. And with it open, just as we did with our point light now, our level blueprint is aware that we have our trigger box selected. So if we right click in the graph, it's going to give us some options here right at the top that pertain to this trigger box. It's going to give us the ability to create a reference to it, call functions on it, but at the very top, it's going to give us the ability to add events for it, which is exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and click the little expand icon here to expand this section. And there's a couple options in here. We're only focused on collision, and collision is used to determine when we collide with objects in the world, so when we collide with our volume. So go ahead and select that, and there are the 2 overlap events that we want to add. There's a third option here for on-actor hit. We're not going to worry about that for now. We're only focused on the begin and end overlap. So let's start out with the on-actor begin overlap. So go ahead and select this one here. It's going to add a new node to our graph. Inside of our graph here, let me actually make this just a little bit bigger. So we have our new node on our graph, and I kind of wanted to explain something here really quickly, or not necessarily explain it, but point it out if you haven't seen it or noticed it already. Look at our on-actor begin overlap node here, and look at our event begin play. They both have this red border across the top of the node. This signifies that these are both events. So anytime you see a node with a red border across the top, it is an event. So it's just Blueprint's way of kind of helping you visually understand what's happening inside your graph from a glance there. If you look at the toggle visibility node, if I zoom in a little bit, it has the blue border, and it also has an F next to it. This lets you know that this is a function node. So just wanted to point that out in case you were saying, well, why are some red? Why are some blue? These 2 nodes are events. So let's go ahead and continue. Let's actually select the event begin play here. We're actually going to delete this because we're no longer going to be using it. So I'm going to delete it. Going to take our on-actor begin overlap here. I'm just going to move it up here. Just left click and drag and move it up here like so. And going to take the executable out. Just left click and drag off of it and plug it into our toggle visibility, making sure we get that green check mark. And believe it or not, our script is done. Whenever we enter our trigger volume now, we will toggle the visibility of the light. We can compile here. And before we test this, I kind of wanted to point something out in case you were wondering what this other actor pin is. This will allow us to determine what actor actually overlapped the trigger volume. So if we got into a more advanced version of this blueprint, we could determine, say, the type of actor that will only be able to trigger visibility. For example, we could have, if our character could fire a projectile, and whenever they fire a projectile, they are spawning an actor in the world that could potentially overlap this trigger volume. Now, we don't necessarily want the projectile to toggle visibility, so we would drag off this other actor here and run a check to see, is it the character that overlapped the trigger volume, or is it something else? If it's the character, then go ahead and toggle visibility. If it is not the character, then we would not toggle visibility. So I kind of wanted to point that out in case you were wondering what this was. That's what that other actor pin is for. So our script is set up. Let's actually, I'm going to drag this down just a little bit, kind of try to keep it in view here, working with the limited one screen space that I have. Before we play inside the level here, I want to select our player start here, and just by left clicking, and I'm going to grab this green arrow and just drag him back a little bit so he's not starting inside the room. So if we play in the editor now, what we should see is our light is off by default. As soon as we enter our room, the on-actor begin overlap node will fire, turning on our light. If we exit the room, because we have not set up the script yet, the light will stay on, which is fine for now. If we went back into the room, however, the on-actor begin overlap would get called again and toggle the visibility, thus turning the light off at that point. So let's go and test this. Let's click the drop down here from the play option, and let's play in the selected viewport. And our light is off. And if you're watching our screen here, watch the nodes at the bottom of our screen here as we enter our room. So I enter our room, the on-actor begin overlap gets fired and turns on our light. As soon as we exit, nothing happens because we haven't set that up yet. But once we enter our room again, the on-actor begin overlap will get fired again, turning our light off. So our script is working. We are about halfway there now. So let's go ahead and continue and finish off this portion of script here. So I'm going to hit escape and kind of minimize this or stretch this out just a little bit more, just a little bit more room. Let's make sure that our trigger box is selected inside the level. And inside of our graph, we're going to right click again, and we're going to add another event for the trigger box under collision. And this time we're going to add the on actor end overlap. So let's go ahead and select this, like so. Again, there's that red event node. Let's take the executable and let's plug it in, left click and drag and plug it into our toggle visibility. Now we can plug both of these events into this toggle visibility because only one of these are going to happen at a time. As soon as we enter our volume, this will get fired and call the toggle visibility. As soon as we exit, this will get fired and again call our toggle visibility. So our script is complete. We are set up and ready to go. Let's go ahead and compile. Before we test this, there's one thing that I wanted to point out really quickly, especially if you're coming from a UE3 background regarding events and kind of an order of operation thing, explanation with blueprints. So let me go ahead and hop off screen for just a second. Bring up my quick little PowerPoint. It's only 2 slides. It's very short, promise. So what I wanted to talk about really quickly here is in UE3 in Kismet, you could create an event similar to what we've done just now. And this event could be entering a volume and turning on, so you can turn on and off a light, etc. In UE3, you could have an event that fired off multiple actions at once. So this one event would call a bunch of different actions to occur. The problem with doing it this way, though, in UE3 is that there was no guarantee in the order of operations in which these are performed. So any one of these scripts could get executed in a particular order. That could be problematic, especially if you're trying to do scripted sequences and you want things to flow in a logical order or in sequential order. So say, for example, we wanted this action to fire first. So when our event is fired, we want this one to fire first, we want this one to fire second, and we want this one to fire third. There was no guarantee in UE3 that it was going to function that way whenever this event was called, and that was problematic. So that brings us to Blueprint in UE4. The way we do things in Blueprint to get that functionality is, first of all, I changed the name from action to functions because that's what they are in UE4. They're still actions under the hood, I guess, but we call them functions because that's just the more standardized way of referring to them. What we would do is we would set it up in a logical manner here from left to right. We would have our event, call our first function, and then after that first function is done, we would call our second and our third, etc. This is the natural flow, I guess the sequential flow is the best word I can describe it for blueprints in UE4. In order to get that functionality, you would have to set it up in this manner so that the event is fired, the next function that you want to happen would occur, and then the next, and so on. There's no way to set up an event that fires off multiple functions at the same time. Everything in UE4 in Blueprint is sequential firing. So I did want to mention that. Now there is a special node that we're not going to get too much into. We're probably not going to touch it in this video series. There are some other Blueprint quick shots out there that we cover this particular node and using it. There's a sequence node where you can kind of change up. You can define the sequence, as the node suggests, in which you want your scripts to fire. We're not going to be touching that in this video, but I did want to mention that traditionally, and let's say most of the time, when working inside of blueprints, your scripts are going to fire you want to set them up so that they fire sequentially, so that your order of operations flows in this particular manner. So I kind of wanted to touch on that really quickly in case you start working with blueprints a little bit later. You have this frame of reference when setting up your blueprints to keep in mind. So let's hop back to UE4 here. And let's actually test this, our setup here. So I'm going to hit play in the editor, and keeping our blueprint on screen here. So when I enter, our light comes on. There's our light. And when I exit, the on actor end overlap should fire as well, which it does, and it turns our light off. So our script is working. We can turn it on and off as we enter and exit our room. Now there's one more thing that I wanted to do before we wrap this video up here. Let's see, we are about 15 minutes in. So let's do one more thing before we close out this video and finish working inside the level blueprint. So what we're going to do now is our light turns on and off, but we want to add a little bit of a delay before it turns on and off. And again, Blueprint is pretty smart. It kind of knows what you want to do. So what we could do is let's take our on actor begin overlap here. And let's drag off of this wire, this executable, left click and drag. And you see we can place a new node off of this. So let's drag off and release. And inside the executable actions here, let's search for delay because we want to add a delay. And right there under flow control, we have a couple options. We have a retriggerable delay, but we also have a standard delay as well. Let's go ahead and choose the normal delay here. We could use a retriggerable delay for a more complex blueprint, but for our purposes, the standard delay will work just fine. Now, when we select this function, again, there's that F next to delay. When we select this function, watch what happens to our graph inside the level blueprint. It adds our node for us, and it automatically reconnects it to our toggle visibility. So it's created a node in between those two. Blueprint says, oh, I see what you were doing. You were trying to add something before this happened, so I'll let you add it, and then I'll reconnect the rest of your network. So we have our delay node now, and it's currently set to a duration of 0.2 seconds. That's a little too fast. Let's set this to say 0.5, so about half a second. So when we enter our trigger box, we'll get a half-second delay, and then we'll toggle the visibility. Let's do the same thing for the end overlap. I'm just going to slide this over here. And I'm going to select our node here, make sure that our delay is selected. I'm going to hit Control-C. And down in our graph here, I'm going to left-click in an empty space and hit Control-V. So you can copy and paste nodes inside of Blueprint as well. So we have our second delay here, and I'm just going to reconnect these. So I'm going to take the executable, plug it into the delay, and take our completed and plug that back into our toggle visibility. So let's compile and let's test this now. We should now get a delay for triggering our light when we enter our room here. So I'm going to play. And again, you can see in our graph down there at the bottom, you'll be able to watch this in real time. So if I enter our room, it gets fired and a delay happens and then it triggers our visibility. As I exit, it gets fired, a delay, and then it fires our visibility again, toggle visibility again. So one more time, we go in, the delay, and we exit, and a little bit of a delay as well. So there we go. That's going to do it for this video. Again, we've been working inside the level blueprint and wanted to mention it one more time just to kind of drive it home before we stop working inside the level blueprint here. The level blueprint is excellent for scripts that need to consist within a single level. Anything that you want to do in multiple levels, you're going to want to be working inside of a class blueprint for that. And we're going to get into that in the next video. Because the level blueprint is self-contained. Anything that we do here is going to reside, anything that we do inside the level blueprint is going to reside in this particular level. So this whole setup that we've just set up right now, our triggerable light and little room here, if we wanted to duplicate this in another level, we would have to copy all these assets over to that new level, which we could do, but we would probably want to set this up as a class blueprint so that we can drag and drop this in any level that we want and it will just work. And we're actually going to start doing that in the next video. So let's go ahead and pause here and we will pick it back up in the next video when we start working with class blueprints. Thank you guys for watching and we'll see you then.